I never planned to tell this story out loud, especially not like this, but some moments stick to you, you know what I mean? They don't fade, they don't soften, they just sit there waiting for the right night to come back and demand answers. For me, it started the day I walked into a courthouse wearing a suit that cost more than my first car and still felt like the poorest man in the room. The looks told me everything before anyone even spoke. To them, I was already guilty, already lying, already out of place. Let me back up a little. My name doesn't matter much anymore, so let's just say I'm Marcus Reed. I grew up in a neighborhood people drove through with their windows up. Teachers expected less from us cops, watched us longer, and success always came with an asterisk like it must have been a mistake. I learned early that if I wanted anything, I had to be twice as prepared and half as loud. So I worked, harder than anyone around me. Late nights, early mornings, skipping parties, skipping sleep. While other kids were figuring out who they were, I was figuring out how to survive. By my mid-30s, I'd built a company from nothing. No investors at the start, no rich uncle, just stubborn belief and a lot of ramen noodles. Eventually, the numbers got big enough that people stopped asking where I came from and started asking how they could get a piece. On paper, I'd won. Nice house, clean car respect that came with titles. But respect is a funny thing. It disappears fast when the room decides you don't belong. That's what happened the day everything cracked open. I was involved in a business dispute. Nothing criminal, nothing dramatic. Just a contract disagreement that should have been settled in a conference room, not a courtroom. But the other side played dirty. They painted me as aggressive, untrustworthy, difficult. Words that sound neutral until you know who they're being used on. By the time we walked into court, I could feel the shift. The whispers, the sideways glances, like they were waiting for me to slip up and confirm whatever story they'd already written in their heads. The opposing attorney, a guy named Daniel Whitmore, leaned into it. Tall, polished, perfect smile. The kind of man who looked like he belonged everywhere. Every time he spoke, he made sure to emphasize my tone, my expressions, my attitude. At one point, he said, "Mr. Reed tends to get emotional under pressure." Emotional? I almost laughed. I'd negotiated deals worth more than his entire career without raising my voice once. But the judge watched me closely after that. Too closely. Like I was a problem waiting to happen. The breaking point came when Whitmore accused me of hiding information. Flat out said I was trying to manipulate the process. My attorney objected, but the damage was done. I felt the heat rise in my chest, that familiar burn of being misjudged. The old version of me wanted to snap back to remind them who I was, what I'd built. Instead, I took a breath, then another, and I spoke. I said, "With respect, that's not accurate and I can prove it." Calm, clear, no edge. The room went quiet. I laid out the timeline, the emails, the receipts. Not defensively, not angrily, just facts. One by one, Whitmore's narrative started to crumble. You could see it in his face. The confidence flickered. But here's the thing. Even as the truth came out, I could tell the room was still deciding whether to believe me. Facts don't always win immediately when bias is involved. Sometimes you have to force the truth to sit there until it gets uncomfortable. The judge called for a recess. In the hallway, Whitmore approached me. Smile gone now. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "you could have made this easier if you'd just cooperated from the start." I looked at him and finally let myself smile. "I did cooperate," I said. "You just didn't expect me to." That's when I realized this wasn't just about the case. It was about proving I wasn't who they thought I was. Not angry, not reckless, not lucky. Earned. When we went back in, everything shifted. The judge asked sharper questions not just of me, but of Whitmore's client. Inconsistencies surfaced. Motives got exposed. By the end of the day, the ruling was clear. The case was dismissed, not settled. Dismissed. Clean. You'd think that would feel like victory, right? Like standing on top of the mountain, arms raised. But it didn't. What I felt was something quieter, heavier. Relief mixed with anger that it had ever gone that far. That I'd had to perform calmness just to be treated fairly. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me how it felt to win. I paused. Then I said, "I didn't win." I was just finally heard. And yeah, that happened. That night I sat alone in my car longer than usual. Not because I was sad, but because I was thinking about how many people never get that moment. How many walk out labeled defeated, blamed just because they didn't fit the picture someone else had in their head. I thought about my younger self being told to keep his head down, not make waves. About all the times I'd swallowed injustice because fighting it felt exhausting. This time I hadn't swallowed it. I'd stood there, calm, steady, unmovable. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. People reached out. Quiet messages. I saw what you did. That gave me courage. Even a former employee admitted he'd misjudged me at first. That one stung more than the courtroom ever did, but it also mattered. Here's the twist, though, the part that still messes with me. A few months later, I ran into Whitmore at a charity event. Same suit, same polished look. He nodded at me almost respectfully. Then he said, "You handled yourself well that day." I thanked him, then asked, "Would you have said the same if I'd raised my voice?" He didn't answer, just looked away. That silence told me everything. So, what's the win here? Is it the case dismissal, the public validation? Or is it the fact that I didn't become what they expected me to be? I still don't know. Maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's none. What I do know is this. Being underestimated can break you, or it can sharpen you. Being judged unfairly can make you bitter, or it can make you precise. That day in court, I chose precision. And it changed how I see myself more than how anyone else sees me. Now, I want to ask you something, and don't answer it lightly. If you were in that room already labeled, already doubted, would you stay calm and play their game, or would you burn it all down just to feel heard? Is justice about truth, or about who knows how to present it better? And how many times have you judged someone without realizing you were doing it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear the uncomfortable answers, not the polite ones. If you've ever been misjudged, underestimated, or pushed into a box, you didn't choose share that too. Someone reading it might finally feel seen. And if stories like this matter to you, stories about power bias and quiet resilience, make sure you're subscribed. Because the conversations we avoid are usually the ones that change us the most.